Hey everyone, welcome to Whiteboard Friday. And today we're going to be talking about how to incorporate exploratory testing into your overall testing strategy. Before, we've been talking a lot about the theories behind exploratory testing, the do's and don'ts, and here we're going to be talking about 3 ways to really use and leverage exploratory testing in different facets of your business. Whether it's going to be paired testing, doing it in teams, and then also incorporating that into a UAT cycle of testing. So let's talk about paired testing first. First thing we want to kind of notify you about is about when you actually do testing just by yourself or doing siloed testing, there's usually 3 things that will come up that are really not efficient for your testing process. The first thing is that when you find a defect and you're all by yourself, you don't really understand whether that's due to a requirement or due to a coding mistake that's actually going on in your organization. So there could be a wrong requirement that's been written, or it could be the requirement needs to be updated, or the user story needs to be updated. You don't really know that. You're just logging defects against blindly something that's either in the code or against a particular user story or requirement. The other thing is when you're taking defects and you're creating them, what you're doing is you're just throwing them over the wall to the developer. And what happens is that without actually communicating with that developer, there's a bottleneck that occurs. And so you have all these defects that the developers are constantly in the backlog of working on, and it's really just going to really not get to an area where they can be resolved because there's so many defects being flooded to them to work on. The last thing is that there's too much time between that developer and tester to resolve something. So even if you're passing defects over to the developer, you have no idea when they're actually going to be resolved. And the more defects you pass over without having immediate feedback, the more miscommunication you're going to have and the more delay in that defect actually being ready to be reproduced in an actual test environment. So with paired testing, what you're doing is trying to get rid of all these issues. The first thing is that when you're actually doing paired testing with a business analyst or a developer, what you're able to do is actually have a close integration with another person of that development team. And what that means is that you can minimize all that miscommunication because the developer is going to be sitting right next to you, or they're maybe a couple of steps down the hall from you, right? Or if you're using Skype or something like that, where developers are in different regions of the state that you're in, or even in the country, you can use that as a way to really communicate back and forth when you're actually testing a feature. The other thing is you're getting immediate feedback, right? As soon as the new code is being delivered, you can give immediate feedback right away. The developer can say, hey, it's been released into production. Okay, I'm going to do an exploratory test session. I'm going to go out and test that new feature. And if I need to reply back to the developer, I can do that right away. And then the last thing is that it really helps out with the fact that when you do find a defect and you are talking to the developer is actually then going to go and fix that issue right away. And so once that issue's been fixed, the time it takes to reproduce that defect or to retest that test session, you can do it right away because that new code is being delivered into that new environment with the fix. You can also incorporate, aside from paired testing, is a team-based method for exploratory testing. And this means that you have a bunch of teams that are set up that are traditionally doing step-by-step script test cases, and what they want to be able to do is to say, you know what, I want to have a group of members go off and actually do exploratory test charters, test sessions, and actually do those in with one another. You'll notice that, and the reason why we like to do this is because it's really easy to learn how to actually get started with an exploratory test session. And we talked about that earlier, how you don't have to do all these pre-described scripts. You can have objectives, you can have charters of actually where you're going to do these sessions, and it's just really easy to get started and ready to go. The other thing is when you're incorporating this team view here, what you're really doing is, or team-based sessions rather, what you're doing is you're having those team views with different perspectives and viewpoints. And so if I were to assign 5 different user profiles to one team that's doing exploratory testing, I may get 5 different viewpoints as well when I'm actually doing maybe or testing that same feature that's been rolled out. And the other thing is that we talked about reducing overhead. Exploratory testing is very minimal in overhead, so there's not a whole lot of work that needs to do to prep these teams. You can get them started with those sessions, and they're off and ready to go. And then lastly, we talk about user acceptance testing. And user acceptance testing is actually one of the best times that I loved actually in being involved with when I was actually a tester before I actually came to QASymphony. And the reason why is because they're the subject matter experts. They know what to do. They're actually using the system even more frequently than I was as an actual tester. But there are challenges with actually managing user acceptance testing. And the reasons why they're challenging is because one is that UAT testers aren't familiar with typical syntax that goes on with test case management software. They're not familiar with a configuration or environments even, or step descriptions or step variables, right? They just know to go test a certain feature. The other thing is that they're not really trained in tools as well to use in traditional test case management software. And so what we want to be able to do is kind of remove that and actually move them over to being able to just say, you know what, take an exploratory test charter that you have, go off, perform the business flow that you would normally do, but then also have a charter that can map out exactly what you found so that we can also give that to the development team and also to the testing team to help you resolve those issues. So we're going to focus on really being able to help them document defects better without having to go through a step-by-step overhead of a test case that they may have to do. And then the other thing is that UAT testers usually have a short period of time to do this. They have other jobs that aren't traditionally in the testing environment or testing field. And also they don't have the actual attention span to test 6 to 8 hours a day. So we want to keep them very much engaged in the application they're testing. And the last thing they want to do is sit down and go through a bunch of steps 6 hours a day to find defects. They want to go off and do their business processes and find that. And also, again, they have that short period of time window to actually give feedback to the features they're testing. So again, what we want to be able to do is with exploratory testing, you're allowing the UAT testers to not necessarily have to stick to a prescribed script. You're allowing them to say, you know what, if you find a different area during a business process where there's an opportunity there to find defects or to find new features, go off in that direction. We're giving that ability to do that so that your attention span isn't going to be so short. And then also what we're trying to do is, with exploratory testing, again, with all that overhead, you're really going to be able to maximize the short amount of time you have with your UAT testers, because they're going to go off and do those business processes and dedicate only to exploratory testing rather than pre-described scripts that you have. So that's part one of kind of how to incorporate exploratory testing in your testing processes. And come back next time, we'll talk about part two and incorporate some other things. So thanks for watching.